The dust whipped across the plains as Madeline Shaw stood on the creaking porch of her father's ranch, clutching a telegram that had turned her world to ash. The year was 1878, and at 20 years old, she'd just become the sole owner of the rocking 3,000 acres of prime Wyoming grazing land that everyone in Bighorn County knew she couldn't possibly manage alone. The funeral had drawn the entire town. Her father, Samuel Shaw, had been respected, if not particularly well-liked. His death after being thrown from a horse left Madeline with an inheritance that made her both valuable and vulnerable in a land where women were scarce and property was power. "Miss Shaw," Sheriff Donovan called out as he approached the house later that afternoon. His boots left heavy imprints in the mud as 3 men followed behind him. "Got some business to discuss." Madeline squared her shoulders. She'd spent the morning reviewing the books her father had kept, discovering debts she hadn't known existed. "Sheriff," she nodded, refusing to invite them inside. These men had been her father's drinking companions, not his friends. "What brings you here on such a day?" The sheriff removed his hat, revealing thinning gray hair. "Your father owed considerable money to Mr. Patterson here. We've come to discuss settlement terms." Patterson, a banker whose belly strained his waistcoat buttons, stepped forward with a ledger. $5,000, Miss Shaw." "Due immediately?" The amount was staggering. Madeline knew the ranch didn't have that kind of cash. "I'll need time to review my father's accounts properly." "Time isn't something we can offer," Patterson said, his tone falsely sympathetic. "However, there are other arrangements that might be made." "A woman alone can't run this operation. Perhaps a marriage of convenience I'll manage just fine," Madeline cut him off, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Give me 3 months to settle accounts." The men exchanged glances. "1 month," Patterson countered, "or we'll be forced to foreclose." After they departed, Madeline sank onto the porch steps, the weight of her situation crushing down on her. She needed help her pride didn't want to accept. 2 days later, Madeline rode into town with a plan forming. The bank loan was impossible. Patterson had made that clear enough. But there were other options. The Rocking S had healthy stock and good grazing land. With the right foreman and a crew for the upcoming cattle drive, she could make it profitable. The town seemed different now. Faces that had shown sympathy at the funeral now watched her with speculation. Women whispered behind gloved hands as she passed. In the mercantile, Mrs. Abernathy's usual warm greeting was replaced with a curt nod. "Just the supplies on this list, please," Madeline said, sliding a paper across the counter. Mrs. Abernathy's eyes scanned the list. "Mighty big order for a woman alone. Will you be wanting credit?" "No, I'll pay cash." Madeline counted out the coins, aware of every penny leaving her dwindling funds. "Heard you had a visit from Sheriff Donovan," the older woman said casually. "People are talking about how you'll manage." "I imagine they are," Madeline replied coolly. "I'll need these delivered today." Outside the mercantile, Madeline nearly collided with Nathan Quinn as he stepped off his horse. He caught her elbow to steady her, and their eyes met briefly before Madeline pulled away. "Miss Shaw," he said, tipping his hat, "my condolences about your father." Nathan Quinn had arrived in Bighorn County 2 years earlier. At 26, he'd established himself as one of the most capable hands in the territory, working primarily for the Double J Ranch. His reputation with horses was unmatched, and his quiet manner kept him mostly out of the saloons and trouble that drew other cowboys. "Thank you, Mr. Quinn," she replied formally, though they'd known each other casually through community gatherings. Her father had once commented that Quinn was too independent for his liking. A man who thought for himself rather than following orders blindly wasn't useful on a ranch. Samuel Shaw had declared, "If there's anything you need." He began. Madeline hesitated. Pride warred with practicality. "Actually, Mr. Quinn, I'm looking to hire experienced hands for the spring drive. I understand you know cattle." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You're planning to run the Rocking S yourself?" "I am," she stated firmly. "Is that a problem?" Nathan studied her face, noting the determination in her eyes. "Not for me, madam, but it might be for others." "Others can mind their own business," she replied. Would you be interested in discussing terms? I need a foreman who knows what he's doing. I have obligations to the Double J through the month, he said, but I'd be willing to talk after that. Madeline nodded, relief washing through her. Tomorrow evening at the ranch, then, to discuss possibilities. As she turned to leave, she heard the saloon doors swing open down the street. A group of men spilled out, among them Patterson and Sheriff Donovan. Their laughter carried on the wind. Poor Samuel, Patterson was saying loudly enough for all to hear, rolling in his grave, seeing his precious ranch in the hands of that headstrong girl. Give it a month before she's ruined the whole operation. Nathan watched as Madeline's back stiffened, but she didn't turn around. Instead, she mounted her horse with practiced grace and rode out of town, her head held high. The following evening, Nathan arrived at the Rocking S as the sun dipped behind the mountains. The ranch was substantial, a large main house built of solid timber, a well-constructed barn, and several outbuildings spread across a yard that showed signs of recent tidying. Madeline greeted him on the porch, dressed practically in a simple skirt and blouse, her dark hair pulled back from her face. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Quinn. Please come inside." The interior of the house reflected Samuel Shaw's practical nature, functional furniture, a few hunting trophies, and little in the way of feminine touches. Nathan noted a stack of ledgers on the dining table. "Coffee," Madeline offered, moving to the stove. "Thank you." Nathan removed his hat, holding it in his hands. "Before we start, Miss Shaw, I should tell you what people in town are saying." Madeline's hand paused on the coffee pot. "I can imagine. They're saying your father left the ranch in debt. That Patterson's looking to foreclose and sell to the Calder outfit from Montana." She poured the coffee with steady hands. "Patterson and my father had a complicated relationship. Yes, there are debts, but the ranch is sound. I have a month to raise $5,000. Nathan whistled softly. "That's a tall order, which is why I need to get cattle to market as soon as possible. My father had planned a drive to Cheyenne next month. 300 head would bring enough to clear the debt and have operating capital for the year." She placed a cup before him and sat down. "But I need a foreman and a crew willing to work for a woman." "That's where the trouble lies," Nathan said gently. "Men around here aren't accustomed to taking orders from women, especially in ranching." "Are you one of those men, Mr. Quinn?" He met her gaze directly. "No, madam. I judge people by their competence, not their gender, but I'm wondering why you choose me. I'm not from around here, don't have deep connections." "Precisely why," Madeline replied. "You're not part of the old network that thinks a woman can't run a cattle operation. And I've heard you know your business. I'll pay standard wages until the cattle are sold, then a bonus of 10% above that." Nathan considered her offer. It was generous, but the risk was substantial. "What about your own experience with ranching? Your father kept you involved in operations." A shadow crossed Madeline's face. "My father believed women belonged in the house, but I wasn't inclined to stay there. I've ridden with every drive since I was 16, though not with his blessing. I know cattle, Mr. Quinn, even if most people don't know that I know." Her candor impressed him. "I'll need to see the herd, assess their condition before I can commit, of course." First thing tomorrow, they agreed on terms for the inspection, and as Nathan prepared to leave, Madeline walked him to the door. "There's one more thing you should know," she said, her voice tightening. "There's talk in town that I'm damaged goods." Nathan's brow furrowed. "I don't follow. 2 years ago, I was engaged to James Hollister. He left me a week before the wedding, claiming I'd been improper with another man. It wasn't true, but the damage was done." Her eyes flashed with anger at the memory. "If you work for me, that reputation might rub off on you." Nathan studied her face in the lamplight. "People talk, Miss Shaw, always have. I don't much care what they say about me." The next morning, Nathan rode out with Madeline to inspect the herds. The Rocking S cattle were healthy, predominantly Herefords with good weight and temperament. As they crested a hill overlooking a valley where 100 or more cattle grazed, Nathan had to admit Samuel Shaw had known his business. "Your father selected good breeding stock," he commented. "He did," Madeline agreed, "though he refused to consider my suggestion about crossing with Angus for better winter hardiness." They spent the day riding the boundaries, checking water sources, and assessing the condition of the herd. By late afternoon, Nathan had a comprehensive understanding of the operation's strengths and weaknesses. "You've kept up with the ranch work since your father's passing?" he asked as they watered their horses at a stream. Madeline nodded. "With help from Miguel, our only remaining hand. The others left after my father died said they wouldn't work for a woman." Miguel Vasquez, been with the ranch for 15 years. Loyal to the bone, but he's getting older, can't manage a drive on his own anymore. Nathan made his decision as they rode back to the ranch house. "I'll take the job, Miss Shaw, but we'll need at least 6 more men for a drive that size." Relief broke across Madeline's face. "Thank you, Mr. Quinn. When can you start?" "I'll speak with John Jensen at the Double J tomorrow. He's a fair man, might release me early if I explain the situation." As they approached the ranch yard, they spotted a wagon in front of the house. Miguel stood on the porch, talking with 2 men Nathan didn't recognize. "Miss Shaw," Miguel called out as they dismounted, "these gentlemen say they're here about your father's debts." The men turned, and Nathan immediately sensed trouble. One was tall and thin with a scar running along his jaw. The other, shorter and stockier, had the hard eyes of someone comfortable with violence. "Miss Shaw," the taller man said with an exaggerated tip of his hat. "Thaddeus Wilkes, representing certain interests in Mr. Patterson's bank. We've come to discuss accelerating the timetable of your loan." Madeline straightened her spine. "The terms were clear, Mr. Wilkes, 1 month. "Circumstances have changed," Wilkes replied smoothly. "Mr. Patterson believes the ranch would be better served under different management. He's prepared to offer you a settlement, $1,000 to walk away now." "That's robbery," Madeline replied, her voice steady despite the color rising in her cheeks. "The ranch is worth 10 times that." "Perhaps," Wilkes shrugged. "But with your situation, you might find it the most generous offer you'll receive." Nathan stepped forward. "The lady said she has a month. I suggest you honor that agreement." The stocky man shifted his weight, revealing a pistol at his hip. "And who might you be?" "Nathan Quinn, Miss Shaw's new foreman." The men exchanged glances. "Quinn, heard you were running with the Double J outfit." "Things change," Nathan replied evenly. Wilkes smirked. "Indeed they do. Well, Miss Shaw, we'll take our leave for now, but consider Mr. Patterson's offer carefully. A woman alone faces many challenges in this territory, especially one with a compromised reputation." After they departed, Nathan turned to Madeline. "What did he mean by that last comment?" Madeline's expression hardened. "My former fiancé works for Patterson now. The rumors he spread have been useful in certain business dealings, apparently." "That's despicable." "That's business in Big Horn County," she replied grimly. "Are you reconsidering your position, Mr. Quinn?" Nathan met her eyes. "No, madam, I believe I'm exactly where I need to be." Over the next week, Nathan officially joined the Rocking S, moving his few possessions into the small foreman's cabin near the main house. John Jensen had been understanding about his departure from the Double J, though he'd warned Nathan about the gossip surrounding Madeline Shaw. "They say she's ruined," Jensen had said bluntly. "Got herself involved with a married man while engaged to Hollister. Town hasn't forgotten." Nathan had simply nodded. "Appreciate the warning." Now, as he worked alongside Miguel to assess the ranch's readiness for the cattle drive, Nathan found himself increasingly impressed by Madeline's knowledge and determination. She rode as well as any man, knew the cattle by sight, and had a head for the business side that her father had clearly undervalued. The challenge of finding additional hands proved difficult. 3 men Nathan approached in town declined outright when they learned the ranch belonged to Madeline. "Won't take orders from a woman," one said flatly, "especially not one with her history." Nathan found himself growing increasingly defensive of Madeline, though he kept his feelings carefully contained. They worked together from dawn until dusk, planning the drive route, checking equipment, and preparing the herd. One evening, as they sat on the porch reviewing the ledgers, Madeline sighed deeply. "We need at least 4 more men, and time is running out." "I might know some fellows up from Texas," Nathan suggested. "Good hands who wouldn't care about local gossip." "If you trust them, that's good enough for me," she replied. Her trust in his judgment sent an unexpected warmth through him. The night was cool, stars emerging in the vast Wyoming sky. For a moment they sat in comfortable silence. "May I ask you something personal, Miss Shaw?" Nathan ventured. She looked up from the ledger. "You may ask. I might not answer. These rumors about you. Does it bother you what people think?" Madeline set down her pencil. "It used to consume me. I spent months trying to convince people of the truth, but James had powerful friends. Eventually, I realized that people believe what they want to believe." She met his gaze. "Does it bother you working for a woman people call ruined?" Nathan held her eyes. "No, madam. I judge people by their actions, not by what others say about them." A smile touched her lips. "Then you're a rare man, Mr. Quinn." The following day, Nathan rode to a neighboring county where he knew several experienced cowboys were looking for work. By evening, he'd secured commitments from 3 men who would arrive within the week. Returning to the ranch, he found Madeline in the barn, tending to a mare about to foal. Her sleeves were rolled up, her face intent with concentration. "She's having trouble," Madeline explained without looking up. "The foal is positioned wrong." Nathan removed his coat and moved to help. Together they worked for over an hour, guiding the struggling mare through the difficult birth. When the foal finally emerged, slick and trembling, Madeline's face broke into a radiant smile that caught Nathan off guard with its beauty. "Well done," he said softly, watching as she gently cleared the newborn's nostrils. "We make a good team," she replied, glancing up at him. In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition neither was prepared to acknowledge. Nathan stepped back, suddenly aware of their proximity. "I found 3 men willing to join the drive," he said, changing the subject. "Still need 1 more." Madeline nodded, her focus returning to the foal. "That's excellent news. We're getting closer." But their troubles were far from over. The next morning, Miguel discovered 2 sections of fence cut along the north pasture. 30 head of cattle had wandered onto neighboring land owned by none other than James Hollister's father. "This wasn't an accident," Nathan stated as they repaired the damage. "Someone wanted to cause trouble." Madeline's expression was grim. "The Hollisters have wanted this land for years. My father refused to sell. We'll need to post watches at night," Nathan decided. "I don't trust this situation." Their suspicions were confirmed when Sheriff Donovan rode out later that day, a smirk barely concealed beneath his mustache. "Got a complaint about Rocking S cattle trespassing on Hollister property," he announced. "That's a $50 fine, Miss Shaw." "Those fences were cut deliberately," Madeline protested. "We're the victims here." "Got any proof of that?" Donovan countered. "Any witnesses?" Nathan stepped forward. "Sheriff, those cuts were clean and deliberate. Why would Miss Shaw damage her own property?" "Not saying she did," Donovan shrugged. "Could have been carelessness, poor maintenance. Ranch is falling apart without proper management." Madeline pulled out her coin purse, counting out the fine with steady hands, though Nathan could see the anger in her eyes. "Will there be anything else, Sheriff?" "Just some friendly advice," Donovan said, pocketing the money. "Patterson's offer still stands. Things will only get harder from here on out." After he left, Nathan found Madeline in the barn, angrily shoveling hay with such force that he worried for the pitchfork's integrity. "They won't stop," she said without turning around. "They'll keep picking away until they force me to sell." "We won't let that happen," Nathan assured her, moving to take the pitchfork gently from her hands. "The men I hired will be here tomorrow. We'll have enough eyes to protect the property." Madeline looked up at him, a vulnerability in her expression he hadn't seen before. "Why are you doing this, Mr. Quinn? You barely know me, and this association isn't doing your reputation any favors." Nathan set the pitchfork aside. "I believe in what you're trying to do here, and I don't much care for men who use their power to bully others." Their eyes held for a long moment, and Nathan felt an impulse to reach for her hand. He resisted, maintaining the professional distance he'd carefully established. The new hands arrived the next day, 3 experienced cowboys named Tom, Frank, and Levy. They were rough men but competent, and they seemed unbothered by working for a female ranch owner. "Money's money," Frank said simply when Nathan had explained the situation. "And a cow don't care who owns it. With additional help, preparations for the cattle drive accelerated. Madeline worked alongside the men, earning their respect with her knowledge and willingness to tackle any task. Nathan found himself increasingly drawn to her intelligence, her determination, and the rare moments when she let her guard down enough to reveal a quick wit and warm laugh. 10 days before the drive was scheduled to begin, Nathan rode into town for supplies. The atmosphere in the mercantile was noticeably chilly when he entered. "Here you're running with the Shaw woman now," the clerk commented as he filled Nathan's order. "Interesting choice." "Miss Shaw runs a professional operation," Nathan replied neutrally. "That what they're calling it." A voice drawled from behind him. Nathan turned to find James Hollister leaning against the doorframe. Hollister was handsome in a polished way, with pomaded hair and an expensive coat. "Something on your mind, Hollister?" Nathan asked, keeping his tone even. "Just wondering what she offered to get you to sign on," Hollister smirked. "Must be the same thing she offered Davenport while she was engaged to me." Nathan felt heat rise in his neck but maintained his composure. "You should be careful about spreading lies, Hollister." "Not lies if they're true," Hollister countered, pushing away from the doorframe. "Everyone knows what she is. They say she's ruined Quinn, damaged goods." Something snapped in Nathan. Before he could think better of it, he stepped closer to Hollister. "Then I'll ruin myself for her too." The mercantile went silent. Hollister's face flushed with anger. "What did you say?" "You heard me," Nathan replied quietly. "Miss Shaw has more integrity in her little finger than you have in your entire body. So if standing by her ruins my reputation in this town, I'll gladly bear that cost." Hollister's hand twitched toward his gun, but the clerk intervened. "Not in my store, gentlemen." Nathan paid for his supplies and left, aware that his words would be all over town by nightfall. He hadn't planned to make such a declaration, but now that he had, he realized the truth in his statement. Somewhere along the way, his professional respect for Madeline had deepened into something more. When he returned to the ranch, Madeline was in the corral, training a young horse with patient, gentle movements. The sight of her confident and graceful stirred something in his chest. "Mr. Quinn," she called, noticing him. "Everything go well in town?" Nathan unloaded the supplies before answering. "Had a run-in with James Hollister." Her expression tightened. "What did he want? To spread more poison," Nathan replied honestly. "He made some comments about you that I couldn't let stand." Concern crossed her face. "What did you do?" "Nothing violent," he assured her. "But I made my position clear. I stand with you, Miss Shaw, regardless of what anyone says." Madeline studied his face, seeming to search for something in his expression. "That could cost you, Mr. Quinn. Some things are worth the cost." That evening, as they finalized plans for the cattle drive, the atmosphere between them had shifted. There was a tension not unpleasant, but charged with unspoken feelings. "We'll leave at first light on Tuesday," Madeline confirmed, tracing the route on a map spread across the dining table. "If all goes well, we'll reach Cheyenne in 12 days. Nathan nodded, trying to focus on the map rather than the way the lamplight caught in her dark hair. The river crossing at Beaver Creek might be tricky this time of year. As Madeline leaned forward to examine the spot he indicated, their hands brushed. Both pulled back slightly, the brief contact sending a current between them. "Miss Shaw," Nathan began, his voice lower than he intended. "Madeline." The sound of approaching horses interrupted whatever he might have said. They moved to the window to see Sheriff Donovan and 5 men riding into the yard. "What now?" Madeline muttered, moving toward the door. Nathan followed, a sense of foreboding building in his chest. The men dismounted, and he recognized Patterson and Hollister among them. "Miss Shaw," Donovan called, "we have business to discuss." Madeline stepped onto the porch, her posture straight and unyielding. "It's rather late for business, Sheriff." Patterson moved forward, a document in his hand. "This is a writ of foreclosure. Due to evidence of mismanagement and danger to neighboring properties, the bank is exercising its right to take immediate possession of this property." "That's impossible," Madeline protested. "I have 2 more weeks." "The agreement was contingent on proper management," Patterson replied smugly. After the incident with the Hollister property and reports of unqualified labor being employed, the bank has determined the collateral is at risk. Nathan stepped forward. This is illegal, and you know it. Stay out of this, Quinn, Donovan warned. This is legal business. It's theft, Nathan countered. And I won't stand by while you rob this woman of her inheritance. Hollister laughed. Big talk from a drifter. This isn't your fight. It became my fight when you decided to use lies and intimidation instead of honest business, Nathan replied. The tension in the yard was broken by the sound of approaching riders. Tom, Frank, and Levy rode in, alerted by the commotion. They positioned themselves beside Nathan, a silent show of support. Patterson's confidence wavered slightly at the sight of the additional men. This doesn't change anything. We have the legal right to be heard in court, Madeline interrupted. Which is where I'll challenge this so-called foreclosure. Until then, you're trespassing on my property. Donovan's hand moved to his gun. Don't make this difficult, Miss Shaw. That's enough, called a new voice. Everyone turned to see Judge Wilson riding into the yard, accompanied by two men from the territorial marshal's office. I thought I might find you here, Donovan. The judge, a stern older man with a reputation for fairness, dismounted slowly. Patterson, I received a very interesting telegram from the Territorial Bank Examiner today. Seems there are some irregularities in your books that require immediate attention. Color drained from Patterson's face. What are you talking about? Falsifying loan documents, improper foreclosure proceedings, collusion with local officials, the judge listed calmly. Marshal Thomas here would like to review your records first thing tomorrow. Donovan started to protest, but the marshal cut him off. That includes any official documents signed by the sheriff's office, sir. The situation had shifted dramatically. Patterson, clearly shaken, tried to maintain his composure. There's been a misunderstanding. Of course, we'll cooperate fully. I'm sure you will, the judge nodded. Now, I believe you were just leaving Miss Shaw's property. As the men retreated, Madeline turned to the judge in confusion. How did you know? Judge Wilson smiled slightly. Mr. Quinn visited my office yesterday with some very compelling evidence about irregularities in your father's loan. I made some inquiries that confirmed his suspicions. Madeline turned to Nathan in surprise. You didn't tell me. Didn't want to get your hopes up until I was sure, he replied. After the judge and marshals departed with promises to sort out the legal mess, Madeline and Nathan stood alone on the porch. The ranch hands had tactfully withdrawn to give them privacy. You saved the ranch, Madeline said softly. Why didn't you tell me what you were doing? Nathan moved closer to her. When I examined the ledgers with you, some figures didn't add up. Your father was too careful a businessman to make those kinds of errors. I suspected Patterson had altered the loan documents after your father's death. And you risked everything to prove it, she marveled. Your reputation, your future in this territory. Some things matter more, he replied simply. In the silvery moonlight, Madeline's eyes shimmered with emotion. In town today, what exactly did you say to James Hollister? Nathan hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. He said you were ruined. I told him then I'd ruin myself for you too. A soft gasp escaped her lips. Did you mean that? Every word, he admitted, his voice rough with feeling. Madeline, I came here to help you save your ranch, but somewhere along the way I found something I wasn't looking for. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the pulse fluttering in her throat. And what was that, Mr. Quinn? Nathan, he corrected gently. And what I found was you. The real you, not the woman they gossip about in town, but the strong, intelligent, honorable woman who fights for what's hers. Madeline reached up, her fingertips lightly touching his cheek. I never expected you, Nathan Quinn. Never expected someone who would see me clearly through all the lies. I see you, he whispered, his hand covering hers, and I stand with you whether that ruins me or not. Perhaps, she suggested, a smile beginning to curve her lips, we could be ruined together. Nathan's other hand moved to her waist, drawing her closer. I can think of no better fate, Madeline Shaw. When their lips finally met, it felt like coming home after a long journey. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness and struggle melting away in the warmth they found in each other's arms. The cattle drive to Cheyenne proceeded as planned, with Madeline and Nathan leading a crew that had grown fiercely loyal to the Rocking S. The investigation into Patterson's banking practices revealed widespread fraud that had affected many ranchers in the territory. James Hollister quietly left town when his involvement in the scheme came to light. By the time they returned from Cheyenne, Madeline's reputation had undergone a remarkable transformation. The woman once whispered about as ruined was now spoken of with respect a savvy rancher who had exposed corruption and saved not only her own property but potentially many others. Nathan proposed to Madeline that autumn, as golden light bathed the rolling grasslands of the Rocking S. They were married by Judge Wilson in a simple ceremony attended by their loyal ranch hands and a growing circle of supporters from the community. Years later, when people spoke of the Rocking S, they talked about the formidable partnership at its heart. Madeline and Nathan Quinn, who had defied convention and gossip to build one of the most successful ranching operations in the territory. And sometimes, when asked how their unlikely union began, Nathan would smile and say simply, "They said she was ruined, so I ruined myself for her too." They never regretted it for a moment.